Have you ever felt like you were doing everything right in a relationship? Listening, being patient, showing kindness, yet somehow it still fell apart? She pulls away, grows distant. You're left wondering what just happened. We're taught that if we are kind and sincere, love will follow. But the truth is far more complex. No one teaches us that women, just like men, harbor hidden vulnerabilities, fears, and intricate defense mechanisms, not to judge, but to understand, so we don't get swept away in emotional games. In today's video, we'll uncover 10 common emotional triggers in women, insights that, once grasped, will keep you from wandering aimlessly in your relationships. Grounded in the ancient wisdom of Stoicism, this isn't a guide for manipulation. It's a map for becoming a calm, grounded, and resilient man in love. 1. Fear of rejection. Stand firm so they don't lose themselves. At the core of every person lies a fear of being rejected. In women, however, this fear often takes root in subtle, deeply embedded ways. It's not merely the anxiety of being turned down by a man, but a haunting sense of not being good enough, not being worthy in the eyes of others. From a young age, many women are conditioned by society to tie their worth to how they are perceived. Appearance, demeanor, likability, their capacity to care, all judged through external lenses. This leads them to build a frame of reference that lies outside themselves, and when validation is absent, they easily spiral into self-doubt. When a woman senses rejection, even if it's just a small gesture, a careless remark, or a cold glance, it rarely ends there. It often unleashes a deeper emotional chain reaction. What's wrong with me? Did I do something wrong? Am I becoming unattractive? These thoughts aren't signs of weakness, but the result of long-term social conditioning. In many cases, rejection doesn't just bruise the ego, it shakes the very foundation of their self-worth. What's worth noting is that the fear of rejection doesn't always reveal itself plainly. Some withdraw, become distant, guarded. Others respond with control, jealousy, or puzzling behavior. And some go to great lengths to please, just to preserve a fragile sense of security. These patterns often confuse men. Lacking insight into their roots, many react by criticizing, judging, or worse, retreating altogether. That response not only wounds the woman further, it also fuels a destructive cycle in the relationship. From a Stoic perspective, the task is not to chase after or fix another's feelings, but to remain steady in order to perceive clearly what's truly unfolding. The fear of rejection isn't just a passing emotion. It's a signal that someone is striving to hold on to connection, value, and meaning within the relationship. It's evidence they still care, still place their trust in the person beside them. And for that reason, the right response isn't hollow reassurance. It's calm, consistent, respectful presence. Consistency in words, actions, and demeanor is the foundation for dissolving the fear of rejection. When a man holds firm, not reacting impulsively to another's insecurity, but instead showing up steadily and with resolve, the woman begins to feel safe. That safety doesn't stem from always agreeing or appeasing her, but from not allowing her emotional waves to sway his integrity. Such a man doesn't get pulled under by emotion, nor does he detach coldly. He remains present, listens, but keeps his inner balance. In a relationship, when a woman senses that her presence isn't threatened by emotional fluctuation, her fear of rejection slowly fades. When she sees that her worth isn't judged by fleeting reactions, but by a stable, wholehearted recognition, she feels more deeply connected. And to create this space, a man must master his own emotions, acting not out of impatience or the urge to control. A common mistake is assuming, if she fears rejection, then constant praise and validation will suffice. But that's only a temporary sedative. Safety doesn't come from words. It comes from a way of living. If you claim to value someone, but you're quick to anger, silent withdrawal, or emotional inconsistency, then no matter how beautiful your words, trust won't grow. Recognition must be backed by reliability. That's the only way to neutralize the fear of rejection. This fear is especially pronounced in the early stages of a relationship, when everything is still vague and commitment is uncertain. Any perceived distance, no matter how small, may be interpreted negatively. This is where many men go wrong, either overcompensating with reassurances and losing their natural allure, or being too indifferent, letting the bond erode. In such moments, a Stoic orientation becomes a compass, unmoved by passing emotion, not chasing constant validation, yet remaining sincere and clear. That's the kind of presence that endures. Another crucial point, non-reaction, is not indifference. On the contrary, it's only when we aren't swept away by emotion that we can truly see what the other person needs. Often, it's not an explanation they seek, but presence. A presence that doesn't judge, doesn't condition, and doesn't waver. The Stoic man doesn't try to fix another's emotions. He understands that feelings come and go, but character and principle remain. Recognizing the fear of rejection is the first step toward building healthy relationships. By not reacting impulsively, not fleeing or imposing control, a man can guide the relationship toward depth. He does not attempt to master the woman, he masters himself. And in that mastery lies freedom. In that steadiness lies attraction. This is where Stoicism is not just a philosophy, it is a daily practice, where every interaction becomes an opportunity to cultivate character, will, and compassion. 2. Overthinking, steady action, speaks louder than 1,000 explanations. One of the recurring challenges in relationships is the failure to understand how others process thoughts and emotions. For many women, the capacity for deep and nuanced thinking is natural. But when unchecked, it can easily evolve into what is known as overthinking. This isn't a reckless habit. It is a psychological defense mechanism aimed at predicting, interpreting, and controlling uncertain situations. When even minor events occur, a missed message, a subtle shift in tone, a glance that feels off, a woman often interprets them through multiple imagined scenarios. She won't stop at the surface. Instead, she begins asking herself a flood of questions. Is he upset about something? Did I say something wrong? Is he losing interest? These questions aren't a sign of weakness. They reflect caution and a desire to stay connected. However, without emotional clarity or in an environment lacking psychological safety, overthinking can slowly morph into chronic anxiety, resulting in a sense of losing control. What makes overthinking dangerous is that it doesn't require evidence to grow. A single detail can be magnified, spiraling into a web of negative assumptions. A canceled date for legitimate reasons may be perceived as indifference, neglect, or worse, betrayal. In the absence of clear reassurance, the void fills with doubt. The longer the overthinking persists, the more toxic the emotion becomes. often leading to reactive behaviors like control, interrogation, silent punishment, or total withdrawal. From a man's perspective, this phenomenon is often baffling and exhausting. He may feel that everything is being overcomplicated or problems are created from nothing. But the difference lies in how the two sexes process emotion and decode social cues. While men often seek swift resolutions, women search for emotional safety by analyzing subtle signals. Without clear communication, overthinking becomes almost inevitable. A major driver of overthinking is uncertainty. Women are more prone to it when they receive vague or inconsistent responses from their partner. Silence, ambiguity, or minor behavioral shifts can trigger a cascade of speculation. In an unstable environment, the mind fills informational gaps with assumptions, not because they want drama, but because they're searching for emotional security. The signs of overthinking can be incredibly subtle. It may not be a barrage of questions or a heated argument. Sometimes it manifests as sudden distance, mood swings, or quiet avoidance without explanation. That's when a man senses something's off, yet can't pinpoint why. Without identifying the root, both sides fall into mutual misunderstanding. The woman feels unseen. The man feels unfairly judged or pressured. A practical remedy is consistent presence and clear communication. A man doesn't have to explain everything, but he must demonstrate clarity, transparency, and consistency in behavior. When he proactively shares about his schedule, emotions, or life changes, he helps close the informational gaps, reducing the room for negative assumptions. This clarity isn't submission. It's a sign of someone who takes responsibility for his own emotions and for the well-being of others. Furthermore, remaining calm in the face of heightened emotion is a powerful way to counteract the effects of overthinking. When a woman reacts intensely, what she needs isn't a forceful reaction, but a steady presence that restores her sense of safety. A man who loses his composure only deepens her insecurity. But one who can stay emotionally composed creates the space she needs to return to clarity. Yet most crucial of all is avoiding ridicule or judgment of overthinking. If a man responds with mockery, dismissal, or emotional detachment, the relationship loses its core of connection. Overthinking can't be eradicated, but it can be lessened when a woman feels heard and unjudged. When she experiences understanding and acceptance, she gradually opens up, lowers her defenses, and begins to recalibrate her thoughts in a healthier direction. Over time, if the relationship is built on emotional stability and consistency, the frequency of overthinking will drop significantly. A woman no longer has to wonder, does he still care? Or, what is he thinking? Because she has been given certainty, not through promises, but through reliable and repeated action. That stability is the truest answer to a mind prone to spirals. Understanding the mechanism of overthinking doesn't just help a man avoid unnecessary conflict, it sharpens his equanimity and intentionality in response. In any relationship, how we handle moments when the other is emotionally distressed determines the strength of the connection. And to do that well, one must first possess inner mastery, the very foundation of anyone who walks the Stoic path. 3. Emotional dependency. When feelings attach, freedom vanishes. Emotional dependency often emerges as relationships deepen and bonds strengthen over time. It doesn't arise from weakness or lack of character, but as the natural result of building trust, expectation, and long-term emotional connection, especially in the dynamic between men and women. When a woman truly invests her emotions, she can easily slip into dependency if internal balance is absent. Emotional dependency becomes evident when a woman's emotional state is dictated by the behavior, reactions, and moods of her partner. Joy or sorrow no longer stem from an independent inner world, but become tied to external factors. Most of all, the responses from the one she loves. When a message goes unanswered, a date is canceled, or a small sign of indifference appears, it can unleash a storm of emotions beyond her control. Everything is now filtered through the lens of a need for affirmation. Emotional dependency leads women to continually seek validation from their partner, daily affection, constant praise, repeated affirmations of love. If these needs go unmet, insecurity takes root. Even in a seemingly good relationship, she may feel anxious, doubtful, and prone to negative assumptions. This isn't a lack of trust. It's a sign that her emotional state has become tethered to the presence and responses of the other. Dependency can also erode personal boundaries. When the other's emotions become the focal point, she may overlook her own needs, overextend herself to please, or sacrifice excessively to preserve the relationship. In many cases, she'll tolerate unfair behavior, even at the cost of her self-respect, so long as the emotional connection feels intact. This creates an unhealthy loop where her feelings depend more on others than on her own center. At its peak, emotional dependency often leads to controlling behavior. A woman might begin to impose excessive boundaries, wanting to know where he is, what he's doing, texting repeatedly to reaffirm her place in his life. This isn't about domination. It's the fear of losing a bond that has become her emotional lifeline. Though natural, such behavior, if sustained, places intense pressure on the relationship and often hastens its collapse. Sometimes, dependency takes the opposite form: silence, withdrawal, or self-erasure. A woman may suppress her feelings, avoiding expression of hurt for fear of seeming too sensitive or causing trouble. She yields quietly, not from indifference, but from fear that speaking up might destabilize the relationship. Yet this suppression creates distance, not one imposed by the other, but born from her own inner imbalance. A central force behind emotional dependency is a lack of inner security. When a woman lacks a firm foundation in her own values, goals, and emotional self-reliance, she turns to the man as her sole emotional anchor. In such cases, if he changes behavior or becomes less present, her entire emotional world is shaken. She loses the ability to soothe herself and becomes entirely reliant on whether he meets her expectations. Dependency also weakens the capacity for healthy conflict resolution. Instead of addressing problems jointly, the dependent woman often endures or avoids them. Her fear of losing the relationship makes her suppress her true feelings to maintain peace. But that peace is only surface level. Beneath it, wounds accumulate. Over time, these repressed emotions may erupt into explosive conflict or complete withdrawal. What's unique about emotional dependency is that it doesn't always appear from the beginning. It can develop gradually as the connection deepens. Early acts of care and affection, while beautiful, can turn into an absolute need if not paired with emotional self-discipline. That very need becomes the root of imbalance within the relationship. From the opposite side, Men often don't notice emotional dependency until they feel an invisible pressure within the relationship. They may experience suffocation, a loss of freedom, or a sense of being bound by persistent but subtle expectations. In some cases, if the man lacks emotional maturity, he may react by withdrawing, rebelling, or becoming disrespectful. These reactions, rather than resolving the issue, deepen the woman's insecurity. Emotional dependency shouldn't be treated as a flaw or something to be eradicated entirely. It signals connection, emotional investment, and the desire to maintain a bond. But without adjustment and balance, it becomes a burden, not just for the one who is dependent, but also for the one on whom the dependency falls. A healthy relationship requires that both individuals are emotionally grounded, maintain personal boundaries, and still connect deeply and sincerely. Understanding emotional dependency is a crucial step in cultivating mature relationships. When both people recognize this dynamic, they no longer view emotional reactions with judgment or oversimplification. Instead, they learn to respond with calm, empathy, and honesty, qualities essential for sustaining a connection that is not rooted in dependence, but in resilient mutual trust. 4. Sensitivity to criticism. When poorly delivered, even love wounds. How we respond to criticism reveals deep layers of the human psyche, and for many women, sensitivity to comments, even well-intentioned ones, is a trait easily misunderstood. This does not stem from weakness or immaturity, but from the way self-worth develops in a society where validation holds weight. From a young age, many women learn to adjust their behavior based on feedback, especially from those they care about. This makes even gentle critique feel like rejection, or worse, a sign of inadequacy. To a man, criticism might simply be a technical suggestion, a tool for improvement or growth. But to many women, that same remark may feel like a denial of their personhood. It's not that they resist self-improvement. It's that the boundary between behavior and self is often blurred in how they emotionally receive it. A comment on what they do can easily feel like a judgment on who they are, triggering defensiveness or deep hurt. This is evident in everyday situations. A sentence like, "You should stay calmer next time," might be heard as, "You're always irrational." Or when a man says, "I think you're overreacting," it can come across as a dismissal of emotion and a blow to self-worth. While the intent may be to initiate dialogue, the outcome is emotional withdrawal. The woman pulls back, goes silent, or lashes out, not out of ignorance, but because she feels misread at the core. Sensitivity to criticism also leads many women to over-monitor interactions. They dissect words, glances, tones, searching for hidden meanings. If past experiences involved comparison, belittlement, or being unheard, defensive patterns become stronger. The reaction isn't just to the present moment, but to a chain of past wounds buried in memory. A gentle remark today may reopen scars from years ago, causing reactions that seem excessive or confusing to men. Often, this sensitivity doesn't surface immediately. In many cases, a woman won't react on the spot, but will internalize the remark, replay it, reinterpret it, and slowly drift away. She may become distant, less open, or emotionally cool, not from pettiness, but because she's wrestling with the pain of feeling judged. Left unaddressed, this state can break communication and leave both sides unable to truly see each other. At the root of this sensitivity is a deep desire to be recognized. Like anyone else, Women want their efforts to be seen and valued. Before accepting feedback, they need to feel they're being approached with respect. When criticism is framed with genuine care and empathy, it's far easier to receive. But when it's harsh, detached, or ill-timed, the impact can be corrosive. This sensitivity also shapes how women give feedback in relationships. Fearing judgment or hurt, they often hold back their real thoughts, avoiding frank conversations to prevent backlash. This creates a closed loop where neither person communicates honestly. The relationship stagnates, not because love is absent, but because both are tiptoeing around the truth instead of confronting it together. Sometimes, reactions to criticism turn defensive. Blame shifting, deflection, emotional outbursts used to derail the issue. In such moments, the man often feels stuck, criticize and cause pain, or stay silent and seem indifferent. But this isn't manipulation. It's a defense mechanism against emotional threat. Recognizing this makes room for more humane dialogue and tempers the urge to react impulsively or harshly. It's important to note that being sensitive to criticism doesn't mean being incapable of receiving it. Many women want to grow, to be corrected, to improve, but only within an emotionally safe space. That safety doesn't mean never hearing critique. It comes from honest, judgment-free communication and a spirit of partnership rather than command. When they feel accompanied rather than directed, they open more willingly to constructive input. Lastly, this sensitivity isn't confined to romantic relationships. It spills into all areas of life: family, work, friendships. In environments where criticism is mistaken for attack, people shrink back, afraid to express themselves or speak sincerely. But when responses are tempered with nuance and respect, trust grows, and from that trust comes mature and meaningful connection. 5. The craving for safety, stability, isn't boring. It's what brings peace. The need for safety is one of the most fundamental psychological drives, profoundly shaping behavior in relationships. For many women, this need goes beyond physical or financial protection. It's about emotional steadiness, psychological reliability, and the consistency of how a man shows up in her life. The desire to feel safe is rarely expressed directly, but manifests in a series of micro-responses in communication, attitude, and expectation. In the early stages of a relationship, this need for safety may not be obvious. Both partners are swept up in the excitement of something new, without yet revealing deeper emotional needs. But over time, as the relationship matures, a woman will begin to look for signs that she can commit without fear, that the man is not just a fleeting thrill, but a steady companion for the long road. In this context, safety is not about control or possession. It's about knowing that her feelings, presence, and worth won't be threatened or destabilized by the other's mood swings or inconsistency. When a man shows stability in his words and actions, consistency in how he treats her, and above all, emotional composure under pressure, trust begins to grow. That trust is not built on promises, but on repeated, observable action. Over time, conversely, instability, emotional volatility, saying one thing and doing another, or impatience with her emotional needs, undermines safety. She starts to wonder, is he truly here for me? Can I count on him when things get tough? If these questions aren't answered with consistent behavior, they seed anxiety, doubt, and the slow erosion of emotional connection. One clear sign of the need for safety is the desire for steady presence. This doesn't mean constant proximity. It means emotional availability. A timely message, a sincere check-in, a response that doesn't leave things hanging. These seemingly minor acts create a deep sense of reliability and care. When done consistently and without fanfare, they quietly say, "I'm here and I'm attentive." The craving for safety is also revealed in the desire to be guided by calm strength and a sense of responsibility. Women aren't looking for domination. They seek a steady anchor, a place where they can let down their guard without fear of judgment, a space where their emotions are held, not dismissed. When a man makes decisions with clarity, knows what he's doing and why, and remains composed under pressure, he creates an emotional environment where she feels safe by instinct. This is especially crucial during moments of crisis or disorder. In conflict, when emotions run high or life seems out of control, a woman often isn't focused on who's right. She wants to know if she can trust his steadiness. If the man loses control, reacts poorly, blames, or retreats into silence, the sense of safety shatters almost instantly. But if he remains calm, respects boundaries, and doesn't let fleeting emotions govern his actions, she feels protected, not by words, but by presence. Another factor that contributes to safety is clarity in the relationship's direction. Women don't need to know the exact future, but they do need to know where the man stands, whether his intentions are sincere, and whether they're walking the same path. Ambiguity, evasions, or avoidance of commitment makes them uneasy, causing even minor interactions to be overanalyzed. Not knowing where she stands in his heart is one of the deepest sources of emotional injury. The need for safety also includes the ability to express oneself without fear of being hurt. When a woman shares something deeply personal, a fear, an old wound, a vulnerability, she's not asking for a solution, but for a response. If the man can receive these truths without flinching, judging, or diminishing her, and still hold her with respect, she gradually opens further. The more space she has to be herself, the less she feels the need to protect herself, and the more profound the sense of inner safety becomes. Ultimately, emotional safety cannot be built through grand gestures or impulsive acts. It is the result of long-term stability. Stability in speech, action, emotion, and life direction. A man who remains composed amid uncertainty, who isn't swayed by fleeting feelings or reactive to others' emotions, is the one who naturally cultivates safety. No need to act tough, no need for overstatement. It is through self-mastery, responsibility, and consistency that safety speaks for itself. 6. The fear of losing self-worth. She doesn't need to be elevated, just not diminished. Self-worth is neither abstract nor distant. For every human being, it is the inner sense of who they are, what they're worth, and what role they hold in relation to others. For many women, this worth isn't shaped solely by their own actions, but also by how they are seen in the eyes of the one they love. This makes the fear of losing self-worth a quiet but persistent concern in romantic relationships. This fear doesn't always show up in words. Often, it's expressed through behavior. Unease when he grows distant, doubt when she's left out of future plans, or feeling abandoned when no longer prioritized. These reactions, if misread, are easily mistaken for insecurity or control. But at the root, they stem from the fear of being overlooked, replaced, or no longer holding a meaningful place in someone's life. This fear intensifies when a relationship begins to shift, even slightly. When the man becomes busier, less attentive, or focused on new priorities, the woman may start to feel her place is slipping. She asks herself, "Do I still matter? Does he still need me? Is my value fading in his eyes?" These questions don't arise from selfishness, but from the natural instinct of someone trying to protect a bond built on sincere emotional investment. In some cases, this fear leads to striving for perfection as proof of worth. A woman may try to excel in every area: appearance, work, behavior, care, believing that only by maintaining an ideal image can she avoid being dismissed or replaced. Yet when recognition doesn't come, she risks emotional exhaustion, disillusionment, and a sharper sense of being devalued. Others respond by withdrawing, interacting less, and pulling away. They retreat because they feel their presence no longer adds value. The sense of no longer being needed or important wounds self-respect deeply. When one's existence in a relationship becomes blurred, the fear of losing self-worth can push them to abandon themselves before they're abandoned by another. Another expression of this fear is comparison. A woman may begin measuring herself against his ex, colleagues, friends, or even strangers. This habit of self-contrast only deepens the feeling of inadequacy, often triggering self-sabotaging behaviors, jealousy, suspicion, or provocative reactions meant to draw attention. Whether spontaneous or deliberate, these actions reflect a soul fighting to affirm, "I still matter." A crucial factor in this fear is how the man responds to her emotional vulnerability. When a woman voices her insecurity or seeks affirmation through her behavior, if he responds with coldness, criticism, or detachment, her sense of worthlessness multiplies. But timely acknowledgement, respectful presence, and non-judgmental listening ease her inner turmoil and reaffirm that her value isn't tied to surface performance. This fear also manifests in sensitivity to changes in tone, language, or the rhythm of interaction. A woman may notice the smallest shifts: shorter texts, a colder voice, or a gaze that no longer holds warmth. These signals may seem insignificant to a man, but for her, they may whisper that something essential is fading. She begins to sense that her role is diminishing, and from there, the fear of being replaced or unseen begins to grow. It's important to understand that the fear of losing self-worth isn't just a personal issue. It's part of relational dynamics. A woman may be confident and competent in her career or social life, yet still feel deeply wounded if she senses she's lost her special place in the heart of the one she loves. When self-worth becomes tied to a particular role in a relationship, even small changes can shake her emotional core. Yet this fear shouldn't be dismissed or judged hastily. It signals a desire for recognition and real connection. When understood properly, the conversation within the relationship becomes more humane and empathetic. Rather than reacting to surface behavior, both partners must learn to listen beneath the silence, where withdrawal may be a cry for help, and perfectionism a sign of fearing invisibility. 7. Emotional reactivity. Feelings fade, but consequences remain. One common trait in emotional behavior, especially in women, is the tendency to react and make decisions based on present emotional states. Reliance on current emotion is not a lack of control, but a natural expression of a deeply developed emotional system. where personal perception dominates one's view and behavior in the moment. Women, due to their heightened sensitivity to internal and external emotional signals, often process information through a more pronounced emotional filter than men. This makes their current emotional state a temporary metric by which they assess the entire relationship. When she feels loved and cared for, a woman may become gentle, trusting, and enthusiastic about the future. But with the same partner, a single moment of coldness, untimely silence, or small shift in behavior can trigger doubt, disappointment, or even a desire to withdraw. Emotional dependence on the present moment makes her sense of reality unstable. What once felt certain yesterday can feel meaningless today, not because something truly changed, but because her emotions have shifted. As a result, relationship stability becomes vulnerable to fleeting impulses. An offhand remark, a day without connection, or an unexplained behavior may be misread negatively, wiping out all the positive moments before. In such moments, a man may feel confused by her sudden change in attitude or mood. He may believe everything was fine until she grows distant, cold, or reactive. Often this doesn't stem from a major problem, but from unprocessed feelings now erupting when her current emotions become overwhelming. The man responds with logic, while the woman is caught in emotional flow. This dependency also distorts objectivity. When overwhelmed by negative emotion, she may forget past goodness or misread intentions. A simple delay in replying to a message can be interpreted as indifference, neglect, or even emotional withdrawal. When emotion clouds reason, perception is no longer grounded in reality, but in feeling alone. The result is prolonged instability in the relationship. The man doesn't understand the source of the blame, while the woman feels unheard. A gap forms, not from lack of love, but because they operate on different emotional frequencies. Without emotional regulation or calm presence from one side, negativity escalates, leading to defensiveness, overreaction, or long-term withdrawal. Another key point, this dependency is often accompanied by a constant need for reassurance. When happy, a woman seeks to share and connect. But when her mood drops, she needs steady presence to feel secure again. If the man withdraws to avoid discomfort, she feels abandoned at her most vulnerable. The feeling of being left alone with her emotions is one of the most painful, often leading to deep hurt and fading trust. This pattern also makes relationship decisions prone to emotional impulse. A heated argument may end in breakup threats, sudden withdrawal, or silence. Despite the relationship being stable prior, such actions often don't reflect true intent, but are knee-jerk reactions to emotional overload. Later, she may regret or seek reconnection, but the damage from that outburst remains. Understanding this pattern doesn't mean excusing erratic behavior, but seeing its roots clearly. When a woman reacts strongly, it's not always the issue at hand. It may be her disconnection from the broader picture. What's needed then is not lengthy explanation, but steady presence, calm, unmoved, and anchored, enough to help bring her mind back to clarity. Emotional dependence on the present moment is a natural part of how humans, especially women, experience life. But without self-awareness and proper relational support, it can spiral into a loop of negative emotion. When the partner remains grounded, unshaken by emotional turbulence, yet fully present and respectful, feelings gradually settle, and trust begins to rebuild. 8. The struggle to reveal deep wounds. The deeper the pain, the harder it is to speak. Emotional wounds are deeply personal experiences, and not everyone finds it easy to share what once caused them pain. For many women, opening up about true emotional hurt, especially in romantic relationships, is one of the hardest things to do. This difficulty does not stem from dishonesty or lack of intimacy, but from a combination of self-protective instinct, past experience, and the desire for emotional safety. True wounds are not expressed through surface complaints, but often hide beneath silence, coldness, overreaction, or withdrawal. When a woman feels hurt, she may not speak her pain directly. Instead, she might grow distant, build walls, or act in ways that contradict what she truly feels. This is because deep wounds are often tied to a sense of personal value, dignity, and betrayed trust. The struggle to share pain often begins with the fear of judgment, of being dismissed, or of being hurt again. If someone has faced negative reactions after exposing their vulnerability, mockery, emotional invalidation, or being taken advantage of, they develop a defense, silence. Over time, silence becomes a shield, and defensive behavior becomes the default. They say only what sounds acceptable, behave as if nothing is wrong, while inside, they wrestle between pain and the longing to be understood. True emotional wounds often trace back to profound experiences, past betrayal, being compared, words that eroded self-worth, or feeling never good enough in the eyes of someone important. If these memories are left unhealed, they become psychological trigger points. When the current relationship unknowingly touches these points, even through minor acts, a woman may react more strongly than expected. This often leads men to think she's too sensitive or overcomplicating things, when in truth, she is reliving an old pain still unresolved. The inability to share deep hurt complicates communication. Instead of saying, "I feel abandoned when you stop caring like before," she might say, "I'm fine," or "It's nothing," even though her tone and eyes say otherwise. If the man lacks emotional insight or composure when faced with her evasion, he may react with coldness, frustration, or withdrawal. And when both remain silent, afraid to touch the deeper pain, a distance grows between them, without either knowing why. What makes sharing pain harder is the belief that showing it makes one appear weak. In many social contexts, women are encouraged to be strong, independent, self-reliant, and not overly emotional. This creates a quiet pressure to long for understanding but fear judgment. They are torn between the desire to be comforted and the fear of exposing themselves to harm again, especially to the wrong person or at the wrong time. Not everyone can accurately name what they feel, especially when those emotions have long been buried. Sometimes, even the woman herself doesn't know exactly what hurts. She just knows she's not okay, easily irritable, uncomfortable, or avoiding the other person. Without a safe, judgment-free space to share, she continues to suppress. Suppression doesn't heal the wound. It only pushes it deeper, where it silently shapes her emotions and future actions. Unspoken wounds can become barriers to real intimacy. Without understanding, trust can never fully form. When a woman feels she cannot speak the truth of her pain, she begins to retreat. Conversations grow shallow, affection becomes mechanical, and emotional closeness fades. The relationship may continue to exist, but without genuine connection. The key to helping a woman overcome this barrier does not lie in communication techniques, but in supportive presence. When a man can stay composed, neither reacting, rushing to fix, nor judging even when she cannot clearly express herself, he creates a space where truth can slowly surface. Only when she feels safe from threat will she dare to open her heart and allow herself to be seen in her most vulnerable form. 9. The desire for guidance and the fear of losing control. Initiative is not domination. In the inner world of many women, two seemingly opposing needs often coexist: the desire to be led by a man who is strong, composed, and purposeful, and the simultaneous yearning to maintain autonomy, to have personal boundaries respected, and not be entirely governed. When these needs are not balanced, they can cause internal conflict and complex emotional reactions within the relationship. The desire to be led should not be mistaken for dependence or weakness. It is the wish to feel secure, to be guided by someone with direction and enough emotional steadiness to hold the line when things become chaotic. A woman may be independent, confident, and self-sufficient, yet she still wants the man in her life to be proactive, not hesitant, and not waiting for permission. What she looks for is someone who can make decisions, stand firm in difficult moments, and guide the relationship with clarity and resolve. Being led does not mean being controlled. Women want to feel they are walking alongside someone with vision, not being reduced to submission. They appreciate initiative, but it must be paired with respect, listening, and empathy. If a man becomes overbearing, issues commands, or creates no space for her voice and feelings, her need for personal sovereignty is violated. In that case, resistance will surface, not out of rebellion, but from a sense that her worth is under threat. The fear of losing control often originates from past experiences where women were dismissed, coerced, or devalued when they didn't comply with someone else's will. These memories leave behind the belief that surrendering leadership to another means losing oneself. As a result, they react strongly when they sense their freedom or power of choice is in danger, even if no harm was intended. Sometimes, this inner tug-of-war shows up through contradictory behavior, expecting the man to take initiative, yet reacting negatively when he makes decisions without consulting her. For example, if he plans something for both without asking, it might be seen as caring or as dismissive of her preferences. Her response depends entirely on context, tone, and the emotional foundation already in place. This can leave the man confused. She said she wants me to lead, but now she's upset when I do. The desire for guidance without losing control is especially evident in high-pressure situations that require swift decisions. When emotions run high, a woman often hopes for someone who won't be swept away with her, but who can stay composed and offer direction. But if that guidance comes with emotional disregard, lack of listening, or dismissiveness, it will feel like being led the wrong way. What began as a desire for support transforms into resistance as she tries to reclaim her autonomy. Proper leadership, in her eyes, means that the man understands himself, understands the relationship, and can act in ways that support her without infringing on her freedom. It's when she doesn't have to carry everything alone, but doesn't feel relegated to the passenger seat either. This balance is fragile and can only be achieved when both partners possess emotional maturity and know how to attune to each other's needs. Another factor in this push and pull is trust. If a woman is unsure whether the man understands her limits, or whether his initiative stems from respect or from a need to control, she will stay guarded. Without deep trust, she will hesitate to let someone lead her. But when that trust is grounded and steady, she can allow herself to be guided without fear of being dominated. Instability in the man's emotions can also cause her to reject his leadership. If he's quick to anger, reactive, lacking in direction, or inconsistent in behavior, she will see following his lead as a risk. She would rather take charge herself than entrust her course to someone who cannot regulate his own inner state. In such cases, the desire for support remains, but the need for self-preservation prevails. Ultimately, this desire to be led while maintaining control is not a contradiction. It is a deeply human drive. It reflects the longing to be with someone strong and dependable, while still retaining one's voice and identity. Once this is understood, a man no longer feels confused by what may seem like conflicting responses. Instead, he learns to lead with initiative that never compromises respect. 10. Inconsistent emotional needs, not a contradiction, just emotion in motion. One of the things that often confuses people in relationships is the swift and sometimes contradictory shift in a woman's emotional needs. In one moment, she may crave closeness, deep listening, and emotional connection. But soon after, she may seek space, freedom, and the sense of being unbound. This inconsistency is not emotional contradiction, but the natural result of a complex, ever-evolving process of emotional regulation. Inconsistent needs are common and shaped by many factors: mood, biology, mental state, external pressure, and especially emotional safety within the relationship. A woman may feel deeply connected and eager to share in the morning, yet grow quiet and distant by evening, without any clear or rational cause. To someone unfamiliar with this pattern, the natural response is confusion, even the feeling of being rejected. These shifts in need aren't just about closeness versus distance. They include what she wants from her partner. Sometimes she seeks gentle comfort, other times, strong encouragement. At one moment, she just wants to be heard without advice. At another, she wants clear direction. Because these shifts are neither announced nor easily explained, a man may feel like there's no right way. Behaviors once appreciated might suddenly seem out of place, even when his actions haven't changed at all. This inconsistency is rarely intentional, nor is it meant to create difficulty. It reflects an inner landscape in motion, where emotions, thoughts, and reactions do not unfold linearly, but loop, reverse, or coexist. A person may feel both love and fear of hurt, both desire for closeness and need for space. These seemingly opposing needs can exist at once, leaving the woman struggling to understand herself before she can express it clearly to another. In many cases, women themselves feel frustrated by these shifting needs. They may see themselves as unclear, contradictory, or burdensome for not being emotionally stable, yet lacking the tools to identify or regulate emotions in real time. They often act based on the feeling of the moment rather than the logic of the situation. This results in inconsistent behaviors, often without explanation. A common consequence is that the man begins to feel the relationship is unstable, or that nothing I do is right. If these fluctuating needs are misunderstood, it leads to tension, emotional distance, and mutual misunderstanding. The man may become defensive, less proactive, or pull away to avoid conflict, while the woman sees this as coldness or neglect. It's worth noting that inconsistency tends to appear more strongly in relationships where emotional safety has not yet been firmly established. If a woman doesn't fully trust that her partner can handle all her emotional states without judgment, she will oscillate between openness and retreat, between reaching out and self-protection. These patterns are not signs of a lack of love, but of fear. Fear that showing too much could lead to being hurt. Sometimes these shifts in need are a way for a woman to test the safety of the relationship. By adjusting emotional proximity, sometimes close, sometimes distant, she watches her partner's response to gauge the resilience of the bond. If he reacts impulsively, loses patience, or seems unstable, she may see that as a sign he cannot be trusted. But if he remains grounded, calm, and unshaken, she begins to believe that the relationship can endure the natural tides of her emotions. Inconsistent needs are not flaws, but a feature of human emotional complexity. When understood correctly, they become opportunities for both partners to practice flexibility, resilience, and sustained connection, even without total predictability. Patience, perceptiveness, and emotional steadiness from the partner are what help a woman feel safe enough to gradually regulate her inner world over time. When reflecting on the 10 emotional traits of women we've just examined, the goal isn't to memorize each one mechanically, but to learn how to observe and respond with calm awareness. From personal experience, I've come to realize that relationships don't last because we're always right, but because we know when to stay silent, when to be present, and when to step back to understand rather than react. Stoicism has taught me this: other people's emotions are not things to fix. They're opportunities to strengthen our own composure. When she changes, my task isn't to make her happy again, but to remain steady amid her shifting tides. When she needs space, I don't pull her back, but I remain present. When she seeks direction, I don't shrink from responsibility, but neither do I become overbearing. To apply this philosophy in life is to abandon the illusion that we can control someone else's emotions and instead take command of how we respond. Don't try to become the perfect man by someone else's standard. Be the man who can stand grounded through every emotional storm beside him. That steadiness is what creates safety, trust, and the foundation for a mature, enduring relationship. If you found value in what was shared in this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future content. This is the journey of inner growth, not for the impatient, but for those willing to grow strong, quietly and steadily. Steadfast in the midst of change. That is the true strength of a man. See you in the next video.